All right. Start with appropriation ordinance number 1228. Anybody have any questions for me, staff, about appropriation ordinance? If no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve appropriation ordinance number 1228. No questions, do I have a motion to approve appropriation ordinance number 1228?
I'll move to approve appropriation ordinance number 1228.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve appropriation ordinance number 1228. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Proposed minutes of the March 5th, 2024 regular meeting. Good to me. Any questions on the minutes? Concerns? Minutes stand approved as presented. Any items to add, Maurice? Commissioners have any items to add to the agenda? Anyone have any items to add to the agenda? Come up, please.
I'm sorry, it's you have to claim all the time. I'm Teresa McClure, I live here in Sound, Erin, and I just wanted to say something tonight about all the bicyclists, it's that time of year, and the go-karts that are going up and down the streets like crazy.
Okay, so you want to add that to the agenda?
Please,
Okay. It'll be item number J.
thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Water sewer infrastructure projects. Come on up.
Thank you, Matt. As indicated in the work session, we actually had this agenda item broken into three parts, talking about the Lakeview Estates pump station, the associated gravity sewer necessary to take that lift station out of service, and then the ramifications associated with the existing sewer line that serves the academy and then the church. And there are some paperwork details, legal details that need to be taken care of really before you move any farther with that project. And so I would recommend that we hold until you're able to accomplish that. And really what that means is in writing, you need to, because currently that is a private line, it's owned and maintained by the church. If you tie into it with a public sewer to eliminate the Lakeview Estates pump station, that's gonna have to become, the church sewer is gonna have to become a public sewer, so he's gonna have to maintain, gonna have to be the appropriate agreements consummated legally, using your city attorney and the academy. So I don't see any action necessary unless you need to instruct staff to start that process. I'll be glad to assist with any of that that's related to engineering on it. Obviously, that's, I'm not an attorney and that's above my pay grade, so anything related to the engineering side of it, I'm glad to chime in on.
Thank you.
I'll start with on Thursday.
Yep.
We get the court, I'll get it rolling.
The other projects, the water lines,
Could I just make a comment?
yeah, go ahead.
We kind of had a very similar presentation a year ago. I don't know, I'd like to move forward with this stuff as quickly as possible, especially the sewer. So, I mean, the sewage, I'd like to connect the work with the sewage plant to the gravity feed, as we talked about a year ago. So I don't know what, we've gotten the briefs and they're helpful. I mean, Francis's question during the working session about, do we want to re-wicker the priorities? I think that's important, but whatever they are, I think we need to make sure we're on that list, which I guess we still are, so that we could get funding, and I'd really like to put together a note getting. I'm not pull the trigger on this.
I agree with
Yeah, we
you.
already raised the rates for water, we're sort of setting ourselves up for success, but if everything on here is a two-year window, so that's just my comment.
Brian, come on.
Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I make?
No, go ahead.
I apologize, like I said, I didn't bring the report, but I did look it up. Currently, you guys have 58,000 feet of older cast iron mains in town. All these priorities that we identified cover 22,000 feet. So we did try to prioritize improvements. So we're only proposing with these maps, addressing 38% of your older 1909 system.
Thank you. I agree with you, Matt. I think we need to move on these. Maurice, my question is, so on the sewer, we have, the rates that we have paid off the sewer plant. But we still have the same rates in place, so we're still bringing in more money than we're spending every month. Is it enough for these upgrades?
Well, we don't have a final estimate on that cost, but
I mean,
it's a significant amount of money that will be generated to pay off those sewer plants on the thing.
Yeah.
I would say that, there's a good chance for, what the final cost would be. We need to look into it.
So I guess my question is, what is the next action step? It seems like the sewage
So
stuff is a little more clearly defined at this point.
I was just instructed to contact the St. Grace Academy, talk about attaching to the sewer line, there's an agreement.
I mean, in terms of getting dollar estimates so that we could make a request for that amount, see if we can secure that funding.
You've asked them to put together there's probably gonna be additional costs for the engineers to get to that.
A
So
revised estimate.
we probably need a contract extension, or what would you call that, a new contract to do the work?
As far as the Lakeview Estates and that interceptor sewer, when we first went into that, we were going to do that in phases. And I think that was a recommendation of Francis, was to get out from underneath the area of improvement of the church because of them finishing and cutting grass and that type of thing. We actually had to take it further than that because I had to actually do preliminary design all the way up the hill to make sure that we could even physically drain that length to a gravity sewer and eliminate the pump station. So we're setting at preliminary plans right now. They need obviously additional scrutiny, but I think we're looking at about over $800,000. And then obviously with what I addressed you here related to the legalese, I would hope that the church will work with the city and there won't have to be any monetary change for easements and that type of thing. They ought to be happy that the city would take over maintenance, and you have to do that. You can't have a public sewer coming into a private sewer, going into a public sewer to a public wastewater treatment plant. So, once that portion of it's put in place, but, yeah, once I get direction, then I'll know exactly what I have to do, then I'll come back with the exact contract and the exact fees necessary to complete that.
Okay, so what we're waiting on is what we just talked about, getting the information, right?
Well, no, we don't need to get the easements yet. We just need to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody is in agreement. And it really needs to be in writing, you know, verbal handshake, hearsay. It needs to be, and it can be pretty informal, but again, I'm not an attorney. Bernard will have to
Okay.
address that for you and get that taken care of.
Just out of curiosity, Pat, where does the line go? I mean, where does it connect to the church?
Manhole B7, which is on the access road going south. Do you understand where the stormwater detention area is?
Mhm.
In that road that comes around there, it's about the third manhole down. And with that, based upon the elevation change and the distance, that's where I had to tie in. I can show you here real quick. Maybe.
And then there was a May 15th deadline I heard for prioritization.
To get on the intent, to submit an application, a pre-application to get on the intended use. And that can be done literally 10 minutes, I mean, that's not a big deal
Okay.
to do that. We did that for you guys last year.
Actually, this was a preliminary drawing that you all or the previous commission had, and it's not totally accurate because the church interceptor sewer was not done at the time. In fact, you'll see that the church, they haven't even started any improvements in here. But we tie in here, run up across the creek, come up across this, still on church property, across Mount Calvary, come straight up to the pump station up here. And this is the easement we currently have, so we'll need easement all the way in here. And then from here down to Mission Street on what currently is a private sewer, owned and maintained by the church. So. That
Yeah,
cleared up a little bit for you?
it does, no, it does. How
The
deep is
reason
that?
for this-
How deep is that?
Uh,
How deep is that line?
There are some places where we cross this hill right here that it's 18 feet deep. And at minimum grade, it's at 0.4% grade. And that's just because of the existing contours and the length and meeting minimum design standards for KDHE.
That's the maximum depth is 18 feet
Roughly, yes.
minimum?
Actually, there's places that we will have to concrete line the sanitary sewer because it's too shallow. And we do have a creek crossing here, and that'll be an aerial crossing in a casing with restrained joint pipe. But this easement up through here, I mean, it's an easy written type easement to put it into a legal document for the attorney to, do the easement stuff that could be signed by the church. Because we just have one landowner to deal with here. Same thing down here on down to Mission. We have to have that to be able to maintain.
Can we separate them out? I mean, can we do the lift, you said we can separate the two projects, right? The lift station and but is it all go under one loan? Or,
You could do either, you could get two separate loans, or you could put them together with one loan.
And they can be done at different times within a certain range, within the same one, right?
Right, but there's maybe some efficiencies with doing it in one loan, if you're gonna do the two projects at the same time. As far as, environmental reviews and things like that, that would all be covered. That you have to do for every loan, so there could be some efficiencies.
Probably
Pretty
the collection system versus the improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. Due to the fact that they're two totally different type of contractors, be my recommendation that if we can get concurrence that we can still utilize one loan, that we have separate projects and bid them separately, because you'll get more economies to scale.
But I think it's one to know if we could just start the lift station one sooner, because it's more of a problem out there for backups, and this other one is more of a longer term project, and we want to slow that one down.
Yeah, I can get my portion of it, our portion of it done to go to bid, very quickly, but I can't do that because I have to do a bunch of work with KDHE up front, and I can't really do that till we get this other thing worked out, and I don't think there's gonna be a problem with that.
So it sounds like, yeah, you can do it either way, but one way may be more efficient.
And there could be some impacts on when your loan becomes due, your payments become due. Your payments become due, isn't it, a year after your first draw, 2 years?
18 months.
18 months after your first draw. So if you do a small loan to do the interceptor sewer, you would likely start drawing on that loan quicker than the wastewater treatment facility. So you might want to have a small loan payment.
We can typically work with them, understanding that your initial payments would be more reflective of what you've actually borrowed at that time, because you will not have closed that loan. So the big thing is, if you want to use SRF with the interceptor sewer, that application has to go in with that. If we want to combine both of them, there's still more info I have to put together on the wastewater plant. But we could get to a point to where we could do that here in the next couple months and
But it's gonna have to be in the next couple months for sure.
well, the actual,
Sounds like it might be good to split them out.
we can see.
say that again, Brad?
It sounds like it might be worthwhile to split them out.
If you wanted to move ahead directly with the wastewater plant, I don't know if we need to do that in the time frame that it sounds like the interceptor is.
So you're gonna get with the city attorney.
Yes, and see what sort of language he would recommend for an agreement, and then send it and see if there's an agreement to be had.
What was, have has anybody talked to the academy at all about this?
It's been a couple years ago when they're planning it, it's not fresh in my mind.
And, were they receptive to it?
I don't remember the details.
Yes, they were receptive to it, and I think there might have been some form of letter. And there was a representative from the property owner who presented to the city commission, I believe, and certainly agreed to the whole project, or we would never have started going into it.
Yeah, we had that initial meeting with Drew to talk about trying to get it done for the seeding and dirt work. I just didn't know if anyone was in writing. That's why I said that they would consider it.
Okay, so go ahead.
So on these projects, we got the lift station and the line, I think, seems like, yeah, that's its own project, and then there's the facility, wastewater treatment facility projects. I apologize, I was late, don't know what I missed on that, but, it seems like there's some compliance issues on the front end that we're looking at with the different chemicals. And there's a few machines that might need to be replaced. So there's the immediate need. And then there's more of a broad overall picture of the whole facility and something down the road to look at. But, so it seems almost like those are two different projects as well down at the plant. It's what do we need to do for the compliance? And then the machines to do whatever, just to make life, stabilize it right now. And then it's a different thing to take a look at the whole planet.
That, I would say that's a pretty good summary of the opportunities at the wastewater plant, in that there are some things that should be addressed, I'm gonna say within 2 years minimum or maximum. I don't know if any of you have an opportunity, go down and talk with Mike, go to the Headworks building, go up on the upper level. Wastewater is a corrosive environment. The air handler units are defunct, they do not work. Everything's corroded inside of there, that's where he's trying to work, he has no heat in the winter, things freeze. And that's something that should be put on the short term, and it's on the list in that. But, so yes, if you wanna look at some optimization of those types of things, we could put those together rather easily to go with the interceptor. It would still be two separate, probably contractors, and that's fine. And that wouldn't be a big enough spacing that they would have any concern. It's phase 1 and phase 2, and they would be happening probably parallel.
Put those in one loan.
You put those in one loan. And then take the opportunity, like I said, there's some things that I've been talking with Mike on that I think could give us some of that positive benefit on the phosphorus issue, which could give us some more time to address that.
The one key thing with KDHE, as long as you're not procrastinating or just absolutely say, no, we don't agree with regulatory compliance, we're not gonna do anything, that's when it gets real difficult, because then you get legalese, you get consent orders, and all that type of stuff, and then it becomes no fun. I think what Daniel's telling you is that next permit renewal, you're gonna have a mandate on there for certain constituents. But as long as KDHE feels that you're moving forward, like Daniel said earlier in his presentation in the work session, I'm saying this for Francis' benefit, they're gonna work with us. It's when you get kind of stubborn and kick back a little bit, then they have the ability to just hammer us, and we don't want that.
So if I may follow up on that, if we take a look at the chemical issues that we're running into with KDHE down there, the phosphorus and the other one.
That's the biggest issue down there, that's the long-term issue. That is. The phosphorus is a long-term issue, because that will take a lot of work to get to that point.
So can you define a lot of work? Is that 500,000 or 500 million or what is a lot of work?
I would say you're definitely in the million plus, just for that portion of it, I would.
So there's no way to solve it?
Well, there's certain ways of what I would like to spend some more time evaluating it, to try to get it as efficient as we can inside that basin, because your next step, if those things don't work, where your flow goes up, then we're adding chemicals to take the chemicals out, and that chemical is $50,000 a year or something. It's just more money spent to do on an annual basis that you'll never get any help with. But there are several things on that list ahead of time. For instance, the grit I mentioned, that needs to be done, because that, we know long-term,
that will not be a benefit for the phosphorus issue whenever we decide to do the optimization. And so there are certain things like that that we could start looking at, that could be part of that phase one within the wastewater plant itself.
Because the way, I think I'm hearing it is, there's the big project to fix the whole plant, but there's also some stepping stones and some equipment and some smaller changes that will help with the compliance. And will those smaller things get us into compliance?
It will give us a better shot at it, yes. I believe. Like the grid, the big problem, getting into the details with this, but the aeration of the front end of your plant is not good for phosphorus. And that's part of the optimization that I'm looking at now on your current infrastructure. Is I need to change the aeration patterns in that whole system to help address meeting that phosphorus requirement. And we can do that, but it's a lot of work, we gotta take the plant down when we get to that point. But realistically, on that time frame, I'll put it this way, regulatory wise, in 2 years, a little less than 2 years, if it's not addressed, KDH is gonna say, officially, they will say in the permit, you have to address it now, and we'll give you X amount of time. So we could be talking 4 years from today of finishing up a major construction project at that point. What that short term, what I was talking about in that was there are things that are failing now that are operational concerns. You don't have heat. That doesn't do good on all the rest of the equipment. Like on the headwork screening, I would like to propose to put a washer compactor on that. So when it's pulling all the inorganic, the bottles and everything, there's also organic matter that pulls up and drops into a bucket. It's a barrel at the below. We need that organic material in our plant to help us treat phosphorus. So if we lose it, if it goes into the barrel, it doesn't help us. And that is a concern.
Plus you pay for your disposal of it.
Yeah. The short-term improvements still be useful for long-term.
Yes, I mean, part of them are keeping your current infrastructure alive for the next 20 years. Like the air handler unit, the corrosive, the louvers out there are not even engaged electrically because they're corroded. So nothing works out there. The only way he vents air is to open windows. That doesn't work as well when it's really cold.
I seem to recall, Francis, last year, when you left, the idea was you were gonna look at developing a 20-year, I think there's reference to that in here.
Yes,
A 20-year plan.
that's the scope of
All
what
of which, all of these components,
we're working towards.
feed into that plan. I think that the phosphorus point is that that's the biggest compliance challenge we have.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is because of things that happen on the front end, you inject air, that's more oxygen for PO4, which is the phosphate or
Yeah.
whatever you have going on. If you're not removing the biologics, they're not there to interact in a way to, so it almost sounds to me like
We're
maybe
fighting.
it isn't short-term, long-term,
Yeah.
because it's an integrated process. The front end stuff helps with the compliance stuff.
Right, and all I'm saying is, we don't have to do those short-term, like the grid. We don't have to do those right now. We have 3.5, maybe 4 years.
But is the grit the air process?
The grit
It
is the air
sounds like
process.
that's really important, because
We know, in my opinion, I feel very comfortable telling you, you will need to replace that with a non-aerated grit removal system, and there's plenty of them out there that we could utilize. I feel very comfortable that will be part of the project at some point. If you so choose to do it now, you get kind of a head start and see, well, how much benefit is it? Because if we're getting 4 parts per million in concentration of phosphorus now, and we could get it down to 3 or 2, we've done a good bit of work just with doing that.
On that, aerated, the grid thing, is that a 10,000 or 100,000?
That's,
What's the cost?
I would say between 300,000 and 500,000 probably for that unit. Because it'll be a complete tear out and rebuild within an existing basement which has some of its own inherent.
And if we said, yes, let's go forward with that project from today until we gotta write a check for it, how long would that be?
Well, with the backlog of material, it'll probably take 9 months to even get that made. So you're probably still talking a year before you will be writing a large check for that.
Okay, last question, in your opinion, is that the first step,
That is one of the first steps, yes.
aside from some of the smaller equipment and metal?
Yeah, I would say this, if you want to spend, there is money to spend at the wastewater treatment plant. And if you want to take some of those things and plug them together with the interceptor, that would be very, forward-looking on that, because there are things that need to be done at the plant that we probably don't wanna wait for another 4 years, if that makes sense. So I could break that down a little bit more in both quantity or scope as well as cost. And then we can decide, are those two things, the interceptor and this smaller package of improvements, part of that?
Daniel, one thing we might tell them also, when we put you on the intended use plan at your recommendation, we have to fill in a blank, monetary cost. Doesn't really mean anything, although it needs to be somewhat realistic, and we use $3.5 million. I think
I don't remember the number we used, but it was in the millions, yes.
Yeah, $3.5 million. Now, are you held to that? Is that all you can borrow? No. That's just a
You can do less,
placeholder
you can do
so
more.
that they get a general idea of the magnitude of your project. And that included the interceptor sewer as well as all of the improvements to the wastewater treatment.
Could I ask, I like the idea that you that refinement of actually looking at these total list of things you've identified, identifying the ones you think are the most immediate concerns, and I would just like to add, if you could highlight the ones you think are most likely to have an impact on the phosphorus and maybe the nitrogen, but particularly the phosphorus. So it sounds to me like that's the changing the grit, whatever process, so it's not an aeration process, and retaining that biological material, organic material.
Those are the two major.
And is that a different process, or is that?
It's an add-on to your screen on the backside.
Okay.
So.
It's not the aeration process?
No,
I'm sorry. So
it is separate from there.
So if you somehow noted in that list, these are the priorities, and in particular, these are the ones that I think should have an impact on the phosphorus.
Yes,
I think that-
those two that you mentioned are, in my opinion, are critical on the phosphorus issue,
And they need to be done.
and they need to be done anyway, but the one other item that operationally, is that headworks building and the air handler, and I'm gonna be bringing my electrical down to go through that. That will, if you're gonna do a project earlier, that's one thing that corrosion is a metal building part of it, so we don't wanna let that
So
continue.
those three things.
Those would be, right now, off the cuff, those would be my three things. And yes, I should be able to.
And
get
it sounds
you
like we're
some
probably in the $1 million range when you add those up already.
Probably. I will get you more info on that.
All right, any more questions or comments on the sewer portion? What do you need from us, Maurice?
You've given them direction, I think we're gonna be getting something from them
Yeah.
on that part. And I'm gonna speak to the city attorney about the line tying into that.
Consensus? Is that what you need to know? Do you need?
That'd be fine, yeah, they're just, you can ask for the consensus to get that done.
Everybody in agreement with that?
Thanks.
Thank you.
And the water goes to,
Water, yeah, no, water.
So I won't go through everything on the workshop, but if there's additional questions, but to cover kind of summarize, the next step would be to identify what scope of project, if any, you guys want to move forward. And then we can propose the design fee and help you figure out what type of funding,
How long, funding,
yeah, all that good stuff. But we really need to figure out, you know, how big of a project we want to do, what is the scope.
I'd like to know what, if we do your priorities, but add the yellow in here into that. I mean, obviously, that should go in with that priority number one, right?
I would think so. We actually added it in priority 3 last year,
Yeah.
so it's in the overall cost. I just need to move that cost probably out of there and into, so move 250,000 from priority 3 and put it in priority 1. The priority 1 did include the water well, and I haven't heard recently how the well is doing.
So on the priorities thing, sir, the yellow, going off of what Don has presented, what I recall him saying, the yellow is the projects he likes to see done as soon as possible. The red, priority 1, it's almost as if, the way I'm looking at it, if we take and shift the priorities and have 4 priorities, if you will, or just say priority yellow is the first, because if that's the one where we have kind of immediate needs, and the other ones are starting to get into, there's a little bit of a comfort time level. Just from what I recall Don saying, he's got constant breaks in these the yellow mark lines. He's got the water pressure issue that's a concern in those areas. Like, that's the one right in front of us. And it's also, you know, there's talk about funding, whatever, but that's one where we have the money to do that, from my perspective. As soon as it's ready to go, and then we don't have to really wait. If that truly is what Don's recommending, and I think it is, the top priority, and we have the money in the budget to do that, and it's in the fund right now, I think. My mind would be like, hey, let's make that priority 1, or just, and everything else is a little bit more intense of a project and approach.
But I think more generally, my takeaway from the work session was, we know what needs to be done. The real question now is, I think we need to reprioritize. We're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, and Francis's questions are all along the lines of, could we make sure that those are the actual priorities? Which I think has to do with, you're talking with Don, and I'm convinced, I think your argument is very compelling about including as a very high priority the lines underneath the railroad just because of the time factor. And we can't predict when we're gonna need to change them, but if it becomes an immediate need, we can't address it as an immediate need because there's a built-in time delay. And it just, what intrigued me about, or was interested by in the last is, we have all of our pumps on one side of that track and all of our storage on the other side of the track. So to me, that is a point of critical interest. Now, I don't know what the state of the lines is, but that, I think a relook at the priorities based upon Francis's idea of, you know, immediate need, that would be very important for us, I think. Because I would like to start, and I agree, obviously if something's broken, we need to fix it right away. But it sounds like with all of these things, we can't be thinking about, all right, once it becomes a problem, we address it, because everything's at least a year out. Because of design and then material problem. That's my concern.
In response to that, I mean, the question about reprioritizing, agreed, but if the yellow lines are without question the top priority. That's what I took from Don's presentation a couple meetings ago. Then we can kind of just more hit those right off the bat, get rolling on those. We already have the money, I believe, in the fund to pay for them. And then the other ones, we can focus on those because
Does that
It's
even have to
good
be
more
one of those
discussion.
big projects, or is that just something Don can do, especially that stuff to the,
Yeah.
the west? It's not, looks like it's sort of out of,
You can do the yellow portion if you have the funds to do it, on your own. Like, again, if you ask the state, they're gonna ask for a engineered drawing of it because it's more than a repair. I talked to Maurice and he did ask me if I would have a number for designing that. And if you asked us to design it, go through, survey it, design it, and then submit it for KDHE permitting and then handle a bid letting, the effort that we had to get that done was $33,700. And there are some efficiencies on our end when the project gets a little bit bigger.
that's my question. You
Because,
save money if
You
you
know,
don't get
just to go through a bid letting process and, you know, that's several $1,000s for us in time to go through a bid letting process. And it's the same process if you have $1 million project or $100,000 project.
I agree with Matt, though, and the railroad sounds like,
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like you're, on your legend, priorities 1 and 2, we deal with the railroad, correct?
Right, so priority 1 on the railroad are 4-inch mains. The priority 2 line on 6th Street is an 8-inch main, that's why we pushed it down to priority 2, because those other ones, if that 8-inch main, if one of the 4-inch mains goes down, you're not losing a lot, because not a lot can get through that 4-inch main. If we replace that 4-inch main with a larger diameter pipe, then if one of those other ones go down, the 8-inch main goes down, it's less of a priority because we have another large diameter main. That's why we were replacing the 2 smaller diameters in priority 1. There could be some efficiencies in doing all 3 railroad crossings at the same time and just dealing with the railroad once. It just depends on how you want to prioritize.
Could you cut those out and put them in with the yellow?
It would delay the project, just in going and getting a railroad permit is a timely process. So it would delay, shouldn't say delay, it would push back that project a little bit
Oh,
longer.
Brian, could you, if I could make a comment on that, you could have the design and the evaluation and begin the permitting side for that, and then bid the yellows,
Mhm.
because it's gonna be a utility
Yeah.
actor anyway.
Yeah, we could have 2 separate contracts and have 2 separate bids on it.
So in theory, I mean, going back to the efficiency thing, and I'm not saying these are the ones, but for example, if we wanted to do, I kind of like the 2 out of whatever, so some number of railroad things and the yellow, that would be one, we could save whatever that permitting process fee, you'd only do that once. You said before that,
So when you go through the railroad,
I don't mean the railroad, but the.
engineering.
there would.
The bid.
Yeah.
We would probably end up with, if you have a desire to get the yellow done as quickly as possible, we would probably end up with 2 bids. One bid to contractors that could do the yellow, and then another bid to contractors that would bore the railroad. Because we could get the yellow done and the design done a lot quicker than what I can get through the permitting process with the railroad. So I could have almost that yellow almost under construction by the time I hear back from the railroad.
But in terms of our cost, paying you to get the bids out, we would save money by having, should we just do, I guess my point is, do we just do the yellow and get it done? Or do we just, it sounds like we just do the yellow and get it done and we eat up that cost.
That's what I would recommend doing, because if you just do the railroad crossings, then you're tying in all the pipe, and you're kind of throwing good money after bad there a little bit, because then the next contractor has to dig up and, reconnect, whereas you dig through and have it all as one project, you pressure test it with 7 other blocks of main.
So I guess my question is, are we not in a position right now just to say, okay, well, let's just do
Yellow.
maybe double check with Don to see if the yellow has grown, but then do that priority, authorize that.
So without mentioning the numbers, Don had gotten quotes, but when they reviewed it, it didn't match what it needed to be size-wise. So he did get new quotes from those contractors or whatever, but they may still not be apples to apples, but it's a sizable amount of money. So,
Do we have it, that money?
I don't know, I have to look, I just didn't get that far in there, but it is a sizable amount.
Well, we saw some of those numbers last week, right? We have an extra 200 coming in plus a 300,000 carryover or something.
But we can look, is what I'm saying. And so that's what you're leaning towards, is just trying to do the yellow first and then work out something for those, prioritizing the other, verifying with Don that they're still the priorities as they were presented. Okay.
I have one more thing. So the yellow appears to be a little bit more of a mellow project. Not super intense, right? I mean, we're gonna take this on as a city anyway. Can we just kind of do it ourselves? If you give us an engineer drawing, they'll make the state happy.
Yep.
And then we'll take care of the bids, we'll take care of it all, and that will help cut the costs a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
On your end, because if Don's comfortable already going out and getting bids, I mean, do we need you for that particular part?
No, you don't, not for the state. Once you get over a certain dollar amount though, if you ask your attorney, I think you have to have your contractor bonded on some things. We have a lot of those, that's the bidding documents that we would prepare. It's also a contract document that your contractor can sign instead of just having a proposal with a number on it. You have to ask your attorney on what he would feel comfortable with, there, or not, I guess.
The attorneys hook up.
And it's not that we don't need you, Brian.
Yeah, no,
I didn't mean it that way.
yeah. But to answer your question though, there are some state statutes that say if you're over $100,000, you have to have a bond. So you need to make sure your contractor has that.
Is that pretty normal? The statute say, yeah.
So those are all things that would be included in that bidding process. But if you didn't want us to do it, I'm happy to just design. That's what I went to school for, so not attorney, so.
Mr. Harris.
We're here to service, you guys serve the city of St. Mary's, we want the same thing you do to improve your city. And sometimes it's very complicated in these things when you have some options and variables. That's why we kind of wanted feedback, especially on this side, on kind of your approach. Unfortunately, Francis, you can't just go out and put it in. Number one, we did modeling, we told you where the deficient in line size was, and I know Dawn in some of these locations was gonna replace in kind the same size. That's not spending your money wisely because the model said that it really needed to be a larger size. So, and you're not gonna go back in with the same type. You know, we don't have any control over KDHE, but us as professional engineers, we have to operate under those premise. If we don't, then we're not doing you justice either. If you can figure out a way to do it on your own, I mean, we'll support that wholeheartedly.
I guess for clarification, it's not really us doing it on our own. What I was talking more about is putting out the bids and doing a little bit letting. But going back to something you said earlier, you said about 33,700 for everything, and that included the bid letting and.
That would be we would go out and we would survey, we would put plans together, put specs together, submit it to KDHE, submit it to KDOT too, because you are crossing a state highway. You get that permit, get all that stuff ready, and then we would have a bid letting to where you get competitive bids in, and then they would be bidding to our plans and specs. And then that's where our services would end unless you want us to continue through construction and have any type of construction observation or anything like that. But you don't have to have that either. You should have Dawn look at stuff too.
Yeah, no, I think, not gonna know first, but I wanna know what we're planning on doing about looking at these other priorities. Just keep the ball moving, because you could argue you gave us this talk a year ago and we did nothing. And I think, Matt, you bring up a good point. If one of the railroad lines breaks or something comes up with that and you have a year of no service, it's a really tough look for the city. I just wanna know, what are we gonna do to keep those other priorities moving? I get the yellow done first, sure. What are we doing about the other ones? So as long as we keep the ball moving, that would be my ask.
And I guess that's where I ask you guys, how soon do you wanna move forward on the next priority, and how many of the priorities do you wanna tackle?
We bring this down to reprioritizing, we know what they are before we decide what we're gonna do.
And I don't know if you wanna have another workshop where I can come in and I can tell you why I selected each priority. I would be happy to do that, or we can go through it now.
Probably not now.
Yeah.
I think it would be good for you to talk to Don too, though, just to make sure that, since it's been a while,
Yeah.
probably since you set those priorities, and he's the one who deals with the pipes every day.
Sure. Go ahead.
From my perspective, I'd like to keep going on the yellow projects, the yellow lines. So whether that's keep the item on the agenda, or whatever we have to do, consider your proposal for engineering drawings and everything, and then move forward on that. Once that ball's rolling, it's a lot easier, I believe, to feed into looking at the rest of the priorities and fit that into the schedule sometime this summer, maybe. But
I'll get a contract prepared for that number, unless you direct me otherwise, and I'll give it to Maurice for you guys to consider.
Just consensus? Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, consensus, have them do that, sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you. All right, audit report, 2023 audit.
Good evening. Russell Shipley, representing your 23 audit. I'd like to discuss lots of plans and kind of things going forward. But we'll deal with in the audit in a few years. So with the audit's work, I'll keep it pretty simple. It was a good year for the audit. No major issues, came down for a day, for some advance. You see clerk, no issues, always was great. Maurice, and the staff, so no issues whatsoever. And it's required in other ways, so that kind of pointed that issue, that out as far as that goes, as far as no disagreements, no issues at all. There are a few adjustments, nothing that was significant or unusual as far as going through activity. One's always accrued payroll. I like to have year end, see what goes back in the last year, and adjust that. So again, nothing that was outside of the ordinary as far as that goes, going through the audit. The audit report itself, at the table of contents, is the audit opinion on the report, 3 pages long. At the very beginning, there's mentioned adverse opinion for GAAP. As you guys know, you have to do the regulatory basis accounting under the Kansas Municipal Audit Accounting Guide, and you pass that GAAP waiver every year, so that you do not have to do GAAP audit, GAAP accounting, nothing like that. You should have the regulatory basis accounting, which is cash basis, plus accounts payable and encumbrances, which basically puts expenses back into your budget year, that crosses year end, in that area. So,
Just ask a question.
yeah,
I assume this is standard language that we had in here last year, but it sounded so negative.
it does sound very negative, agree
In
with
my
that.
opinion, because of the significance of the matter discussed and the basis for adverse and modified opinions to be covered, et cetera. Is that just standard?
That is
wording?
standard language, yeah, that is required language from the Kansas.
Okay, so that's not your saying, these
No,
guys.
I was on this board for a while, but that's been the standard language here.
I'm sure it was, it was, struck me as being.
Yep, that's why I said we can ignore the first 2 paragraphs, even though they're required to be here.
Okay.
The main one is that
That's what I
3rd
recall.
paragraph down. That 3rd paragraph down where it says unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis of the county, that's your opinion for your basic accounting. Which in my opinion there, everything is materially stated in all, or fairly stated in all material respects. So that is unmodified, no qualifications, no modifications, that's the opinion that you guys want to have. That's the highest level opinion that an auditor can give, so that's of course what you want. But yeah, those first 2 paragraphs, And that's why I said, we'll skip over those that are required to be here, but not getting an opinion on gap, we're getting an opinion on the rate for basis, so. With that, you know, your responsibilities are to choose your basic accounting, maintain your internal controls for the financial statements, the footnotes, the process and controls of the city. My responsibility is to give an opinion, to remain independent, remain skeptical, go through your financials, go through your process and controls, give me recommendations, findings as I see fit and in that area. Local responsibility is also to affect going concern the city. I haven't seen that in government, which is good, and I don't wanna see that, so that's always a good part. The last paragraph on page 3 does refer to all the schedules in the back, but I give it in relation to opinion as well, that everything is also fairly stated, so. A couple highlights of the audit itself and the report. Page 4 is your summary statement. That's your sole statement. All your funds are here in summary form. Starting at the beginning, unencumbered cash, receipts, expenditures, your ending unencumbered cash, any accounts payable or encumbrances at your end, then any cash that relates to what is in the bank. You know, what we look on here is the 2 cash columns. If there's any negative cash there, that would maintain, you know, basically meaning of a cash violation. Everything's positive. So RC open, everything's positive there. So no issues as far as cash violations go. Cash balances are, you know, I'll say fairly reasonable as far as going through things. I know you guys mentioned you're talking about water projects, sewer projects, so as you were talking, to look at those funds, kind of see, you know, what your cash balances were, what your expenses, what your revenues are every year. And it does, at least this last year, you know, has been increasing based off of, you know, receipts over your expenditures, partly due to raising rates and based on projects that are going on. So your cash balance there are, you know, relatively healthy, but of course you have some major projects going on, so they can't fund everything in 1 year, and that's why you also have to go out and look at loans and other things there as well, so. Then the very bottom piece there is your composition of cash in the bank, between checking, money market, and CDs, so. 2 more things I'll point out here on page 7. Second paragraph at the bottom, we're going to break down your cash as far as what you had in the funds, or what's in the bank, was secured by FDIC, was secured by other collateral and securities within the financial institutions, and then if there's any amount unsecured. And at the end of the year, there's $330,114 that was unsecured. And just talking with Maurice, they looked into it, it's basically, it's like a bank list a CD as far as looking at balances and.
But it is our responsibility. I mean, the banks have always taken care of it, but it is ultimately our responsibility. But, you know, it's just a paper violation, thank goodness, nothing happened.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's, I mean, this is something you guys are supposed to keep track of, and I have to report on it, and if it's, obviously if it's negative as far as that goes, and as long as there's no issues with the bank, it's never an issue, but it's always something to be aware of and stay on top of as far as that goes. One other thing, as far as looking at things on page 12, is your summary of expenditures actual budget. So this shows all the funds that are budgeted. Any fund that's not budgeted, not listed here, there's more detail after this as far as all individual schedules. But on the far right hand column, if anything is positive there, that basically means you have a budget violation. Everything's negative, which means you spent less than what's budgeted. You did have 3 or 4 funds that you did a budget limit for during the year, which allowed you to increase your authority in those funds and kept you within your budget as far as your expenditures go. So no budget violations, which is always nice to see as well. So after that is all the individual funds. Have the individual pages in a little bit more detail, which ties up to the summary, broken out as far as activities, both receipts, expenditures, ending unencumbered cash, as far as that goes. And there's also footnotes as well that kind of describes different processes and also some other areas within the audit within the city. So, thoughts, concerns, or anything else that you'd like me to address or discuss? Be happy to.
Is there anything coming out of the legislature budget process that might be difficult to?
I have not seen any changes for this year, so that's good. We've always, you know, changed what, several years back, and change again. I have not seen anything that they're gonna change. They don't really like any big changes, back years, so it's been a couple of years, so hopefully they stay where they are. I guess one thing you guys may consider when you budget this year, that you know, keep in mind the projects that you're doing, that you will have to start thinking about your potential payments, coming out of the water, sewer fund, or whatever, so make sure you keep that in mind for your budgeting. For any loan payments that might start in 2025 and
So they'll have to be covered, they're not considered grants or there's loans, like the revolving loan fund. We have to have that, but if we set up a non-budgeted fund for that, quote unquote transfer in there. then
Transfer out will still be part of your, if you transfer out of water and sewer, it'll still be, have to be budgeted.
I have no problem with that,
Then you're set, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, either way, somewhere you're gonna do to budget the expense. The project maybe not, because you'll have a project fund, maybe for future payments as part of the loan.
Yeah.
And yes, in 2025, you may not know what that's gonna be, but if you have an idea, and you go through the budget process this year, you get the numbers, think, okay, you might be borrowing 2.5 million over 20 years, the estimated payment might be this, having something there, might save you having to do a budget amendment in 2025.
Anybody have any questions for Russell?
You have to make, if you wanna accept it, you have to make a motion.
Yeah. No questions? I need a motion to accept the 2023 audit report as presented.
Mr. Mayor, I move we accept the 2023 audit report as presented.
A motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2023 audit report as presented. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, would it be all right if we solicit a 2024 audit engagement letter from Russell?
Yes,
Okay, is that your, whenever you want to?
thanks, Russell.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night, sir.
Well,
All right, move on to concession stand bids. We got a couple of them here. All right. First one is concession stand bid for 2024. Rachel Varnado places a bid in the amount of $350 in addition to the full reimbursement for the KDHE license to operate the Riverside Park concession stands for the baseball, softball season of 2024. Operating the concession stand concessions would serve as a fundraiser for Crusader Club Sports and/or SMA. She gives an itemized list of items to be sold. And there's two checks, one for $250 for the KDHE license reimbursement, and one for $350 for the concession stand operation. Pass on that. St. Mary City Commission, RFP for concession stand from John and Catherine Iserman. Please accept this proposal in response to the 2024 concession stand request for proposal requirements issued by the City of St. Mary's. John and Catherine have served the community and visiting guests as a concession stand operator for 10 of the past 11 years. We welcome the opportunity to return as operators of the concession stand at Riverside Park. Please find the details requested in the RFP below. Amount of stipend paid to the City of St. Mary's for the right to operate the stand, $400 for use of the concession stand, annual rent, pay in full the food licensing fee. And then they have an itemized list of products and beverages and pertinent information to my bid. They own commercial concession equipment. doesn't look like Barnos are here. John and Catherine, either of you wanna say anything about it, or
Well, we've,
come up, please?
sorry. We've successfully and ran the concession stand well over the last, for over 10 years. And have really enjoyed it and would look forward to starting the community again.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
No questions, they have more options.
The more options, and they're willing to pay more.
Yeah, I think it's a better selection. And take care of the umpires, the umpires that come.
I don't know, no, I don't umpire those games, I don't think I'm umpire, I don't have an envy to umpire any games this year. I've always gone, last year, I said the same thing I said last year, I'll go with the higher bid, the better bid for the city, which is, John and Catherine, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, then, do you need a food license to do?
The city acquires the food license.
There's a fee there.
It's your stand.
Yeah, they're both willing to pay the fee. Barnard's put in a bid for $350, Iserman put in a bid for $400.
I agree, Mr. Rick, thank you.
I do.
Motion?
I would.
A motion to accept the bid from John and Catherine Iserman in the amount of $400.
I'll move to accept the bid from the concession stand from John and Catherine Iserman for $400.
We have a motion and a second to accept the bid of $400 from John and Catherine Iserman to run the concession stand. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item D is pit bull dog ordinance.
I haven't got a response back from the city attorney. I asked him 3 questions, whatever. So,
I met the dog. I went over to Charlie's house the other day, and my 2 cats would cause more damage than that dog, I guarantee you. I think I would like to see us address the ordinance and change it in a way that we're not necessarily looking at the breed, we're looking at how the dog acts and how the owners, what they do to control their dog. Because that dog is, it's not vicious or mean or anything. I mean, I just don't see it in him. I think we should focus more on the owner of the animal and what their responsibilities are. I'd like to make some serious changes to our ordinance. Come on, yeah, come on.
Has anybody discussed, I know that the city attorney was mentioned quite a bit in the last meeting. Has that gone forward at all with the city
I
attorney?
sent him the information and I haven't gotten that particular topic back from him. So.
Okay, because April 1st is my deadline to be fined or ticketed or citation or fine or impoundment.
Can we do anything about that, or?
Well, what I asked him is, I said, do you think that the city code, that section 2.3 is enforceable? Because they're enforcing it, right? It was vague.
They haven't enforced, not till April 1st.
Yeah, well,
They
they
can
got
notice,
the letter.
notice of possible enforcement.
They're starting to enforcement. So I asked him if it's enforceable, the way it's written. I asked him, could it be better written? And then I said, if they wanted to make it legal to harbor such dogs, can they just repeal that section? So that's as far as I did get that policy from Clay Center, and I sent it out individually to all you folks, and I didn't include it in the packet.
But what can be done? I mean,
We find if there's a consensus to take any action, or we can get working on it. And the consensus would be to take away the breed specific issue or rewrite that part of the code, but there has to be support for that from the commissioner, or those two.
Okay, so we have that section, but as far as Charlie's immediate situation,
Oh, I see, I'm sorry.
April 1st.
That was one point. We just tell them it's under review and it'll probably be okay.
Could I just,
go ahead, Matt.
one of the other questions that we left with last time was, or we were hoping you could determine for sure what the breed of the dog was. In this
We haven't
particular
yet.
case.
We sent that DNA test, it takes 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Because that would resolve it. Yeah, I think, you're right, we have two different things. We have this case and then we have the broader question, so.
Okay, but the ordinance is based on appearance. That doesn't say anything about the breed of the dog, it says appearance.
It has both. That's what we talked about last time. So we'll wait to hear from, I think, we wait to hear from the lawyer and then move from there. But for the particular case of the 1st of April,
Yeah, I'll mention to him tomorrow, and we'll get back,
yeah.
we'll be in touch.
Does it change anything if the DNA test comes back and it says 7% or 28% or 59%? Does it matter according to that, to the ordinance as it stands right now?
If we change the ordinance, then that doesn't matter, you know,
Okay,
what,
okay. Okay, by the next meeting, I hopefully will have the results. I don't know what it's gonna prove though. What's it gonna prove if I bring the results and it says an X number of X percentage of Staffordshire Terrier, if I bring those results, what's it gonna prove?
well,
That's my question.
I see what you're saying, Charlie, and I hate the fact, or very much dislike the fact that we're making, you know, we put it on the owner of the dog to go out and get a test, pay for a test, wait for the results. I think we definitely need to look at what, if anybody has, any dog that causes a problem, that's where I wanna see is the enforcement side of going after the owner of that dog.
That's already in the statute.
Yeah, but, yeah, I don't like the portion that says the appearance. I agree with Charlie on that. And then to have the owner have to go out and pay for all that, I don't agree with at all.
So, April 1st, if a police officer shows at my door, what do I do?
I told John we'd be in touch.
Yeah.
I can't give you the attorney's opinion on the matter
Okay,
until I speak with him, so it'll be tomorrow. He's back. I
Okay.
can talk with him.
all right. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Item E, FICA tax reduction program.
So Mr. Urban did get in touch with them. He had a couple questions about the performance, they're following up on that. So we'll have it before the next meeting, more likely. Okay?
Resolution number 04-24, public property fee.
Should be the one that has the armory on it. Approximately a 30% increase, if I remember correctly. Some of the smaller numbers may be more than that, because they're small, but it's just a proposal, so we don't have to include it, we can comment on it. Send it back.
Sorry.
So the single day access would be 200, I don't have the current one. Yeah, well, I know, I just, you have both then.
150.
Yeah, so 150 to 200.
That makes it-
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
My only concern is these numbers don't really mean anything to me. I can compare them to what we used to charge, but I don't know if this is a reasonable amount of money, because if you look at the other, I think I asked last time, it'd be nice to have a comparison to know if we're,
There's really no good comparison that we came across. One because of the size of the building. I know, was it Alma, you've seen what was the community center, it was $50? Alma? You know, and then there's other places obviously, but a lot of them are really high end. And, you know, I'm not sure, I don't know, I couldn't do it.
You would just take ours up $50.
I'm willing to believe it's still a good deal, I just really don't know in the summertime. Maybe you do, I don't know, I really don't know.
Single day access would go from 150 to 200. 2-day access would go 225 to 300. 3-day access would go from 300 to 400. And each consecutive day would go from 100 to 150. And then gets into the smaller amounts after that. And that was for the residents, non-residents would have a similar increase, percentage-wise based upon their starting point. As would the alcohol and the governmental use one, so. I mean, there's no deadline on this matter, so
No,
if
there's,
you need more input, please, I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but
yeah, I mean, you could go out and try and find more comparisons, but in a lot of those cases, you're comparing apples and oranges.
well, so some of the places we went to websites, and they'll say, call us for a quote, or email us for a quote, and I'm not gonna do that. But the ones that had them listed, a lot of them were really high, and then some of them, like the Alma one, was quite reasonable. A church one, the Newbury Church was,
That
fairly,
seems to be the most comparable for size wise.
fairly reasonable, but it wasn't, it isn't here.
How much was that? Was that in there?
It's a pretty big facility though.
I've been there.
They remodeled it, I think.
Yeah, I've been there.
Well, no, it's pretty much brand new, it's been maybe 10 years old.
Paxton.
If they're non-parishioners from the church, it's $600. And if they are, it's $200. And then the second day adds an extra 100. And then there's liability insurance and a cleaning deposit on top of it. After the,
Have you over in Paxco, have you been to that one?
next to the big church in Newbury,
Oh.
it's the hall.
I mean, size-wise, yeah, it is compatible, but it's a newer building.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a newer building.
They have a cleaning fee on there too, so.
A cleaning deposit. Yeah,
They inspect it and return it on,
returned if the hall is clean with no damages.
That's kind of, is that what our security deposit is kind of for?
So what would you need for us to change ours, just a,
well, this
we have to
resolution.
adopt the resolution?
Yeah, as presented, and that would do it to those numbers and maybe change them at any given time. So there's no rush, but you can do it now, or you can, you know, spend more time looking.
Yeah, if we just don't do anything today, what are we looking to accomplish? You wanna get more comparables, or is that, or are we thinking it needs to be raised more?
Sir, I'm not thinking that.
What's that?
We should just adopt it.
All right.
I think you should make a motion.
I'll motion to adopt.
All right, we have, so resolution number 0424, I have a motion to adopt changes as presented.
Swear, so move.
You have a second?
One second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the changes to resolution number 0424. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries, thank you. All right. Kansas Gas franchise fee, ordinance number 1341.
So that'd be the 20-year one that was left at 2%. So it's ordinance number 1341, you just said that?
Yeah.
It's 11 pages, so the statute changed some years ago, to put a summary, publish a summary of it. And although the number on the top of the one I gave you isn't 1341, the rest of it is accurate and so by the attorney. So if you adopt ordinance number 1341 as presented, and then authorize the publication of the summary instead of the 11-page part of it, and take it ended for 20 years.
Just do that all in one motion?
Yeah, I would say that there'd be discussion, consensus to do the summary if it's adopted, make the motion easier.
Any questions on this, guys? Ordinance number 1341?
I move to adopt ordinance number 1341 as presented.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 1341 as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. And then you want,
I'll put that in the text, because you consented to having published this if it's adopted, you just did it. So
yep, got it.
we'll do it.
Okay, H, fire department building.
So, Mr. Mayor, I asked to add this to the agenda, just mainly start the discussion back up again on the fire department building project ideas. So, several years ago, we started discussing it with our fire chief and looking at, their facility north of the tracks and considering an improvement to their facilities, including maybe a new building up on Second Street, Mount Calvary area. There was a lot of hesitation from the communications antenna tower and plus all the stuff that happened in 2020, 2021, it just got pushed off. So it's kind of been on my to-do list to take a look at that again. The idea is we have our fire department station south of the tracks. We store some vehicles, fire equipment on the north side of the tracks, or in the case where there's a train going through town or something similar to that. And currently we store those fire equipment vehicles near our electric substation and some of the buildings down there. The bridge isn't ideal, the storage isn't ideal, and the consideration is, saving up the money, which they've been doing in that fund, to build or modify the building to just improve our storage of the fire equipment. And it's a project that we put a little bit of work into several years ago, and I think our staff has done a great job allowing that fund to grow. And so there may be an opportunity, if the need is still there, to look at the fire building project. I'm happy to take a look at it, put the effort in to meet with Maurice and Chief and come back with some ideas to consider. But that's all I have, just a quick little history of why that fund's so big, what the intention is, and I'm happy to come back at a future meeting, unless there's no appeal to the project, but I'm happy to come back with some ideas and thoughts from the fire chief.
Brent, just had a quick question, that tower, that communication tower, is that gonna be up for, I heard that was coming down in like 2 years, is that, if that's true or not? Cause I thought that was one of the holdups of putting the building in that spot.
I do not know.
And just some other input, because where this stands in my mind is the chief was in here, we looked at the plans, I don't know how long ago, a few months ago.
It's prior to the election.
Okay,
Yep.
and what we asked at that time was please just tell us exactly what the requirements of the building are. It simply had to do with the amount of space that it had to take up and how to orient it to get the trucks in, because the driveway had to be in a certain place. And the question that I still don't know the answer to, maybe you could find out, is do we really need the stuff that's in that tower for communication purposes? Can we move it to some other position so we don't have to worry about that, how we attach it anyway? So those two updates, I think, would be.
Maurice, what do you,
So the answer to the tower is, I just talked to Marcel about that, and it needs to remain there because that's where the paging system goes through the county. And that's usually the least to remain there, or the county could put up another one, and we could be on them. But we do need to.
And my point remains, I find it astounding that in this day and age of high-tech communication, we have to have that capability on that tower in that location, especially if it's holding up building. It's having a profound impact on the design of this building. And maybe it is the answer, I'm having a hard time accepting that.
But I'd also point out that that tower is gonna need maintenance. The guy wires that support it are supposed to be inspected every certain number of years. I don't remember what year that is, and that's been a long time. So,
there was talk of attaching it to the building,
there was.
attaching the tower to the building.
There are all sorts of options, but I'm just wondering if we really have to have that capability there at all.
Well, they went through these things called Falcon studies, and they checked the elevation, and the paging remains the same. The radios, they switch to a different frequency, and, you know, that doesn't need to be there, but for the paging system, as is, maybe 400 megahertz, you know, the county's on that as well, it's just a very pricey thing.
I just bring those up because I think it's fine, I think we might as well look at it. Because we were still, in my mind, we were waiting for an answer from the chief anyway.
Right.
So if you can get some more detail on that, Francis, seems like that would be good.
I think the location too, I thought, up by the library, there's that.
Well, that was a question that came up, could we
Yeah.
use that property as a location? They didn't have the question.
Current property, also that bridge, I mean, that bridge would have to be redone, completely redone.
At some point, it might need to anyway, I'm not sure what that cost would be. But since you brought up bridges, also prior to the election, there's a bridge out on Palmer Road, which is past or right by the trailer court area, is in for repair. We applied through the county to help get funding for that, we're denied. I just noticed there's a note on my door today that gentleman wants to talk about it again. You know, it's on the city-county boundary, so there's, you know, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars there if it's a bridge, or less if it's a or a box structure, so. But to say that if you put that fire station over there, you might have to speed up the replacement of that bridge over there, or crossing as it's known, I don't know, but at some point we might have to do some work on that too.
Well, yeah, I agree, Matt, I mean, with today's technology, why does that antenna have to be right there? I mean, and it may be the only place that it can go.
Well, it's, in that area, it's because of the elevation in the valley. I mean, we've discussed, I think you were on the board when that was being discussed.
I
That's
know,
the
I'm
only
still
answer.
not satisfied with the answer.
Well, Mr. Mansfield had the idea of having a second antenna, so, that could cover the valley alone, so there's, but then that,
Well, Chuck mentioned the bell towers, maybe when we're talking about that easement for the,
We'll trade on.
I'll let you do
We'll take
that.
trade on.
That's good for you.
Yeah, I don't
I'll
know,
let you handle that
No, I
one,
mean, take over the sewage.
yeah.
put an antenna.
So Francis is one, he's gonna go talk with the chief and myself and come back to a future meeting, that's a consensus there?
Yeah, go ahead,
All right,
yep.
very good.
All right, sidewalks.
So Maurice, kind of to print off a page and quick summary. I think at the last meeting, I mentioned, I think the city commission approved those crosswalks at Second and Elm. And I mentioned the idea of looking at sidewalks on Elm Street and talked to a few of the property owners there. And I thought they made some very good comments, as they know the area up there, and I do, it'd be better to have a sidewalk, if there was a sidewalk on the south side. And then just listening to a few of them, and obviously seeing people walk, they'll kind of tell you where to put a sidewalk. There appeared to be a need, more on the south side of Elm. Specifically, it's kind of how people walk across Second Street. And somebody suggested they can, the academy, could they put a sidewalk on the south side of their entrance road that's in line with Elm? And that would kind of help direct traffic a little bit more sensibly, so. And then there was also the idea that came up is, do we need 2 crosswalks? I think that might have been part of our discussion. A crosswalk on the south side of Elm and the north side of Elm, or could we just make it 1 crosswalk? I think Bob may have brought that up. So I emailed Bill Drew, who's the facilities manager at the academy, and asked him if he was willing to consider some of these ideas and willing to meet. I think on Monday, I met with Bill and Bob Schindler up there, and Bill said that he also saw the need just from how traffic kind of uses that area, both vehicles and pedestrians. So he said he will put a sidewalk on the south side of the Academy entrance road to the church area. And discussing with kind of Bob, it was kind of a consensus, but a recommendation to just have the single crosswalk markings more on the south side of Elm. And if there were to be a sidewalk on Elm, that sidewalk would go on the south side. So that's kind of a quick recap, just from, I told the commission I'd come back with a few things to consider. At the same time, we also went down to the corner of 6th and Elm to discuss kind of the C-clip project. And after looking at it, especially with the idea of the sidewalk just being on the south side of Elm, Bob asked the question, as far as if C-clip, if we can put, the right ramps access on the corners, what corners? And it seems to make more sense just to do them on the southwest and southeast corners, and just have the ramps going east and west and not to the north. Because realistically, there's not gonna be a sidewalk to the north there anytime soon. And there's one other thing down at the bottom, but I think that's kind of the third idea, but anyway, so that's kind of a quick kind of recap. I think the first question is, okay with just doing a crosswalk on the south side of Elm, crossing 2nd Street, and if that would line up with the sidewalk that Bill Drew said he will install. And then what I'd like to come back at a future meeting is consideration of a sidewalk. Happy to look at doing a volunteer project again on the south side of Elm, from 2nd Street to Cedar Tree Lane, specifically because it's hard to have a crosswalk into nothing. We've run into that several times over the past several years, so if we're gonna do a crosswalk there, it's hard to put people in the grass. And so, yeah, that's kind of a quick summary. Happy to keep talking or answer questions this way.
How do we pay for, who pays for the sidewalks?
So my recommendation, and I think it's very interesting, the research on sidewalks as far as what state statute says, and also just kind of what cities around the state do, and what's the accepted way. And also, I think there's also a third thing that kind of has come up over the last year, we go back to the home rule concept, what's in the state constitution, and the home rule that cities are granted, I think it was back in December, we had an issue with the requirement for cities to publish notices. And there's an Attorney General opinion issued last year about the statute that required cities to do those publications. And because the statute treated cities of different classes differently, then the statute was not applicable uniformly to all cities. And therefore, it was the Attorney General's opinion that cities could do a charter ordinance and basically ignore the statute. Reading the statute on sidewalks, it does treat cities of the first and second class differently than the third class. Very similar, in my opinion, to the publication notices, so I think it kind of falls under a similar home rule approach. But even then, taking a look at what cities have done around the state for many years, I think is the cities have just realized, no, this is a public good. It creates a tremendous amount of grief with property owners, telling one property owner and not another, fix this sidewalk, not that sidewalk. So when we looked at this several years ago, as a commission, we saw cities across the state, they're taking care of their sidewalks, they have different methods, every city kind of has something unique, they're doing cost share programs. We said, hey, it's an obsolete statute, it doesn't really make any sense, cities are ignoring it all over the state, we can move forward and just take care of our sidewalk infrastructure. So I think there's a lot of gray there. I called an attorney today who does work for large cities, and he's been doing it for many years, and I asked him about it, because I figured it would get brought up, and he said, yeah, it's just not a big deal. Every city's doing it their own way. I said, well, is there trouble if the city does it? Could somebody ever cause trouble? He goes, no, not really. It's just not that big of a deal anymore. Just because nobody's following it, cities are ignoring the statute. And so, from my perspective, I think the way the city's handled it over the last several years has been good. And I would like to continue along the same path where the city commission would make the decision on which sidewalks to keep improving. If the city wants to pay for it outright, it does it. If it wants to do a volunteer project, that works. If it wants to do cost share, similar to what we've been doing for years. I think that's been well accepted. So that would be my recommendation, is just continue what we're currently doing.
All right, any other questions, discussion on that?
You might know this answer, but how much traffic does Elm Street see?
A lot.
Well, foot traffic, not,
Traffic?
sorry, not
Oh,
just,
quite a bit more since the church was built. I don't know, I don't do it. A lot of people walk up and down that road. I don't do a count. And I probably should keep my mouth shut about opinions about where that sidewalk should be in front of my house, but I do generally agree, and I've said this before, it's not because of this particular sidewalk, I have no clue why the state says that cities don't pay for sidewalks, but that's, so, aside from this, that'd be my general comment on sidewalk.
My comments on it have been, if we're gonna do it, if we're gonna pay for them, then we pay for them. If we're not,
Right, consistency.
consistency.
Yeah.
All right, now, moving on, floodplain report, Maurice?
So that technical assistance program report,
Mhm.
they updated it since they last presented it. It's still in draft form, they've asked for feedback. They did add some new information in there. No action need to be taken, but if you have any comments, you can direct them my way, or you can respond directly to Maria Nealand.
Anybody have any comments on that?
I just thought it was interesting that you don't save much money making it a 50-year flood thing or a 100-year flood thing.
Yeah, they had a different route, where they route some of it down.
Yeah,
before
I
and
was
down.
kind of interested in that. They didn't go into detail, they're talking about rerouting it down,
Maple Hill Road, was it?
yeah, by north of the railroad track and then dumping it into Maple Hill, down in the Maple Hill Road area.
Yeah.
They didn't give any detail on how much that would really impact the floodplain. That was interesting to me, because that's something we hadn't seen before.
I said, there's new information, that's why they want you to comment on it.
Well, my comment would be, they presented that without, as I didn't, I'll admit I read it fairly quickly, but I don't remember seeing a picture of how they think that would affect the floodplain,
Yeah.
specifically that change.
And I went through part, I mean, I didn't get through as well, but I'd asked them to give us a map of the city to show what part of the city dumps water on this side that contributes to the flooding down there.
That's significant though, because that's the big thing, is how do you get rid of, let's see, the thing is, if it's south of that railroad bridge, as I recall from those briefs, the railroad bridge is a choke point. So I don't know, I'm just curious to know that, because that was new, that new route.
Okay. And there's no time limit on that one either, you know, we can remain open for another meeting if need be.
Okay, moving on to the golf course. We have, I'd like to know if what we're gonna do, if we're gonna move forward with get the contract and present it to Great Life. If we're going to ask for requests for, proposal to do the work, you know, what we want done to do the work, but also, and then move forward with the grant application. I think we need to, personally, I think we need to present what we see as a final version of what we would like to see the contract look like, present it to Great Life. And, Matt, I know you made some changes, and the main thing I question on some of the changes you made is, we subsidize the golf course now. We do every year, we subsidize the golf course. And if we enter into a contract with Great Life, and we can't pay the debt 1 month to the tune of a couple $1,000s, I'm not opposed to taking that out of the countywide sales tax fund to match that, or in order to pay it. Maurice, you had some ideas as well.
Those were ideas from, I just wanted to, I sent you guys an email with some things in there. One was to try to rely entirely on the revenue generated, which, you know, who knows. The next one was to be what Bart just said there, is designate some of the existing countywide sales tax money and transfer it. That had been done for many years, and then it stopped, and then of course restored. And then the most hateful idea I had was a sales tax referendum, but I only say that because I think that's the only way that, there's people that are uncertain about whether we cash flow or not. You're never gonna satisfy that because Great Life is never gonna be able to provide that. They won't provide that. They're not gonna say, we'll cover your debt if we don't make the payment, that sort of stuff. So it's either subsidize it some way on paper and hope that you don't need it, or secure the funding that way, so.
Yeah, they're not gonna go for that.
I mean, I don't, my immediate response is if there were some, I see the point. The question is, what's that limit, Is there a max level up to which we would be willing to subsidize? And then would they go for that? I don't know. I think we would have to set that. Otherwise, we're in the same do loop that we, based upon my reading of the history of the golf course, we've been in since it was open. Which is, there's a hope that it's gonna be profitable and that's not, and then it's subsidized.
So I've been working on something related to this, and I apologize, I meant to send this around to Maurice to send around. But kind of reverse engineering where we need to be, and essentially saying, and you know, Great Life may not want to give a hard and fast number, which I can appreciate on one hand. I think revenues are hard to, you know, predict exactly. What I'm trying to do is to say if there's a revenue number that they can hit, you know, and then take out the margin and the profit sharing that they're proposing, and then backing into what type of debt service would that, or how much debt service would that cover? Which would then ultimately say, you know, assume a grant backing all the way up to, well, we can afford to then invest this amount of money into the golf course. And then going off of what they had laid out of, you know, the greens are gonna cost this, seating, center of the bays, all of that, and say, okay, this is our number, is that enough? Because I understand what you're saying there, Matt. I think we should, if we're gonna do this, we want to avoid a scenario where, you know, barring like a catastrophic event, you know, which at that point I think we'd have bigger problems, but we shouldn't be in a position where we're gonna have a huge miss. So I think as much work as we can do on figuring that out, and again, I haven't to send this around, but we'd love to get the commission's thoughts on it of just a kind of working it through from our side of how much we'd have to invest all the way to their side, and then kind of coming back the other way, to say, hey, we can afford this number, whatever that is, and that would rely on them having a revenue number of this. So I think laying it out that way has been helpful for me to think through this, but again, I'd like you guys to lay eyes on it, or I'll send it to you to distribute, but I don't wanna be in that position if we're gonna do it where we have to determine what's the max number.
And all along, if we were to commit to refurbishing the golf course such that it's usable, the one note in that scenario is how much that costs. Well, it's not exactly known now, but that we would know that that's how much we were gonna spend, which would then determine what our debt would be. If everything on the other side is unknown, that's just not
Well, yeah, I think it's,
reasonable.
we know it's gonna cost this.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have to make this. And if there's like zero, you know, but you have to net, you have to gross 1.5 million to make it happen. Well, I don't love those.
So I've agreed from the start, if we can define some more numbers, then that makes it easier for both sides to see how feasible it is.
But we can't, they're not gonna be able to give us first year numbers as far as revenue. He can guess, obviously, but even then, I think Rick is reluctant to give us a number because he just doesn't know. And if we go with that thinking of, well, we don't know, so we do nothing. I wanna do something. I think we need to go do something. And, we can guesstimate forever, but I don't know until we actually do it. Until we actually, get the thing up and running, we're never gonna know.
Well, I do think he should be able to provide at least some directional number. You take the same exact output as Topeka, and I know you're not gonna get the same numbers there, but you should be able to say X amount of memberships.
To be fair, I don't think we've gotten a guesstimate from them yet.
No, I'm saying,
We haven't even gotten to the guesstimate phase. And I'm sure you didn't mean to take it quite this way, but I'm not a proponent of do it first and then see.
Right. Well, if you want, I will ask him, if you want me to.
No, I mean, let's see what, it sounds like Nathan's already sort of put a structure together so we could ask a more exact question. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be the goal, is to say, hey, we think we need to invest this, which would then dictate a revenue of this. And is this even, are we even in the
That's
same?
kind of where I was going with it, is, can I then, if you guys agree, I will then take that information to Rick and see if he thinks that's even possible.
Well, we could, curious to see.
Yeah, so let me share this around, and that would be my
Let
suggestion.
Maurice share.
Yes, but
Yes.
share with Maurice for public consumption. Sorry, that's all I have.
Anybody else have anything on it? All right, thanks, Nate. St. Mary's Housing Board appointment.
So Mrs. Shakaitis has asked to be reappointed to the full-year term. This requires a motion, or no, it requires you to ask if there's any, whatever.
Yeah, does anybody have a problem with, what's her name?
Is it Shakaitis?
Yeah, I don't know her, but anybody have any concerns?
She's serving well now, I presume.
Yeah, St. Mary Shakaitis is,
All right, I'll reappoint Mrs. Shakaitis
Yeah.
to the St. Mary's Housing Board. All right, Teresa, sorry to make you wait, but you're up. Bicycle go-kart.
She doesn't mind waiting. It's been really-
I'm here.
I know, I was gonna put you first, but I figured you'd be here.
maybe Shakaitis.
I know it's this time of year, kids are on their bikes, and that's great, I'm all for it. But do they still have bicycle safety or something like that in town?
They used to, didn't they?
I just had a girl run right into me. I was in my vehicle. She wasn't paying attention. She was zipping down Willow from 63 down Willow, turned right into me. They don't stop at the stop signs, they don't, I mean, they're just going crazy at the north end of town. There's go-karts, and I don't care. I'm a kid, I rode my bike all over town. But we did have to go by the rules. And if there's a stop sign, if they're on the bike, they need to stop. Because those cars going east and west on 7th Street, they don't stop. Just the north and south have the stop signs.
Have you talked to Chief Sid?
I haven't, this just happened yesterday.
Oh, okay, okay.
And then the other thing is, on 7th and Willow, I know, I've said it before. There is a trailer parked right, it's close to the intersection to where if you're stopped at the stop sign on 7th Street and Willow, on the south side, and you're coming down Willow and you want to turn, you can't. You can't turn, you can't move. This car doesn't always see this, I've watched this because I live right there. This car can't always see this turn signal, depending on the size of the vehicle, because there's a trailer blocking it. It's too close to the curb to where, and at night, I've seen 2 vehicles just about go right up on the trailer because they don't see it when they go to turn. And it is right there. And
Is it a flatbed trailer?
it is.
Again, I would recommend, first call would be to Chief Sid,
Okay,
get a hold of him on both the issues. They used to do a bike safety
that's what I
course
thought.
at I know at St. Mary's grade school, I thought they did. They used to do. I don't know if they do, if they still
Well, and I
provide
didn't
that.
know if, like on the city bill or something, the bicycles are coming around, or something. Make sure your kids know the rules or something, those little notes that they put on your city bill. I do read those. But,
Did you get the arch announcement?
did it do what?
The arch announcement?
I did,
Okay,
I
good.
did it.
Yeah,
But I didn't know. I just thought I would bring it to the attention because there's kids galore right now on the bikes.
Thank
And I
you.
just don't want them to get hurt.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, reports?
Alright, so I think when I got this out, after the packet went out, a letter from the library.
Yep.
They're wanting, so it should have been added to tonight's agenda, they wanted this is gonna be rent change in writing. So I would just say, give it some thought, immediate thing, from staff, and get you, have it on the next agenda. I didn't forget to send it out. I was supposed to have it tonight, or there's gonna be someone here to help remind me, and neither happened, so. Next agenda, we'd like to know if the rent's gonna go up, okay?
Rick, on that point, we were gonna increase it last year, but we didn't end up doing it, is that correct?
Well, I don't remember the first part of that, but the second part, there's no increase. It was decided upon yes. I don't remember back if we were gonna increase it or not.
Yes, we will.
Okay, correct.
Stop sign.
April 1st,
No fooling.
no fooling. Let's see here. So last night, there was a planning commission meeting, 2 public hearings. Pear Tree Properties, Dave Perry's one of the folks. They're asking for this area behind City Hall, there's a map on the internet, to be rezoned. So the planning commission last night made a recommendation to rezone it to R3 from I2, which is industrial. That'll be on your next agenda, so when you get their recommendation on that, if you accept their recommendation, it takes 3 of you to do that. If you wanna overturn what they sent you, it takes 4. So, and then the second public hearing was for the street planted back here that was never put in, they're wanting to vacate that. So up until about past, they own this Arrowhead Construction Building now, they vacated from there to 9th, and the south 30 feet would go to the state of the city, and there'd be 30. But then they said they also worked out something with the cold, put some asphalt down, so some of the traffic would exit on 7th. They're planning apartments like they have over there on the lumberyard site. And depending on the number of bedrooms and depending on some other things, there could be 15 units there or so. Now, the planning commission also made a recommendation to you all to approve the vacation of that street easement back there. Okay? Next Monday, there's a public hearing for Mike Pace property north of town, right across from Country Breeze-ish area, to change the zoning from agricultural to rural residential, and have some lots there. He's still moving forward on that. And then, I think 2 weeks after that, I think it's 2 weeks, there's a public hearing, planning commission to reevaluate the setbacks in the the rural residential first, and then maybe we'll look at the other ones. So I can't quote, like in city, you have to have 8 feet side yard and 20 or 25 rear, if whatever. But out in the rural residential, it's different. They're large, and especially compared to the rest of the county. So that, there's a public hearing coming on for that. Library. The cleanup of Mr. Whistler's property started today. It is considerably worse off than you could have imagined. So, and the city employees are doing that. And then tomorrow, they're gonna take we're having a lunch break, but we've invited someone from Amigo that owns it's KS Solar to just talk to us about solar power. And I wanna talk with him about what the city's policy is, how so everyone's familiar with that, so, that's it.
Anybody else have anything? Motion to adjourn?